Anonymous Seniors Room in Bettendorf.
Good evening, and welcome to the Board of Education, Muscatine Community School District, Monday, April 8th meeting. Madam Secretary, would you take roll for us and determine a quorum, please?
Bet. Director DeBeat.
Present.
Drawbaugh.
Here?
Finn.
Here.
Mather.
Here.
McCarter.
Here.
Neighbor.
Here.
Wildermuth.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Tonight we have some special guests in our audience. We have the Boy Scout Troop 783. They allowed me to put them on the spot and ask if they would lead us in the pledge this evening. So I'm going to ask if they would step forward, and we will all stand and join them, but we will take their cue for the pledge tonight. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And when I say I put them on the spot, I asked them about 40 seconds before we got started. So not much more on the spot than that. Thank you very much for doing that. I'd like to welcome all of our visitors and our media representatives. The nicer the weather gets, sometimes I know the harder it is to be here, but we appreciate you joining us. The next thing on our agenda is to have a public hearing. This is for the purpose of certifying the FY19 budget. The budget has been discussed multiple times by the board, but as required, we start a public hearing for this item. I would ask for a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll move to open the public hearing for the purpose of certifying the FY19 budget.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to motion to open for public hearing. Madam Secretary, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Director DeBeat.
Yes.
Drawbaugh.
Aye.
Finn.
Aye.
Mather.
Aye.
McCarter.
Aye.
Neighbor.
Aye.
Wildermuth.
Aye.
All ayes.
Thank you. This is our opportunity then, if there is any discussion on the proposed budget, and I would also ask if there have been any comments that were received at the board office, anything written or oral.
None.
Okay.
None with me either.
Okay. And this would also be the time that if anyone would like to approach the board regarding the budget, since we now have an open public hearing, this is the opportunity to do that. Nobody's moving. All right.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. Madam Secretary, would you do a roll call vote for us, please?
Director DeBeat.
Aye.
Drawbaugh.
Aye.
Finn. Aye. Mather.
Aye.
McCarter.
Aye.
Neighbor.
Aye.
Wildermuth.
Aye.
All ayes.
Thank you very much. Motion carries. The next item on our agenda, very similar to what we just did, we will have as an item for a public hearing for the proposed plans, the specification, the proposed form of contracts, and the estimated cost of said improvements for the Madison Elementary parking lot student drop-off reconfiguration project. I would ask for a motion to open the public hearing.
I move to open the public hearing.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded for the to open the public hearing. Madam Secretary, would you do a roll call vote again, please?
Director DeBeat.
Aye.
Drawbaugh.
Aye.
Finn. Aye. Mather.
Aye.
McCarter.
Aye.
Neighbor.
Aye.
Wildermuth.
Aye.
All ayes.
The public hearing is then open. Again, I would offer an opportunity if there's anyone in our audience that would like to address the board regarding the proposed plans, the specification that will be happening at Madison Elementary for the parking lot and drop-off. This is your opportunity to do so. And it's pretty quiet in the chambers. I would ask Tom or Lisa, have we received any written or oral comments?
None.
None. I'll once again move to close the public hearing.
And is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. Madam Secretary, would you do the honors?
Director DeBeat?
Aye.
Drawbaugh?
Aye.
Finn? Aye. Mather?
Aye.
McCarter?
Aye.
Neighbor?
Aye.
Wildermuth?
Aye.
All ayes.
Great. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is our Citizen Speaks portion of the agenda. This is where if we have anyone in the audience that would like to address the board, you are welcome to do so. I would ask that you step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. We also ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and to know that this is, the board does not get to engage in conversation, but it is an opportunity to present to the board or bring an issue. And I don't think we have any takers for Citizen Speaks. All right. The next item on our agenda is our Student Council update.
Hi, I'm Veda Matos.
I'm Anna Sparks. I'm Kendra Eller.
So first off, we are currently in the process of finalizing our plans for prom, which will take place in the Merrill on Saturday, May 4th from 9 to 11 p.m. And the theme this year is A Night at the Ritz.
Due to the recent flooding in Iowa, our underclassmen have developed a classroom competition to raise money for flood relief victims. This will take place in the next few weeks.
And the upperclassmen are organizing themselves into several small groups to volunteer their time at Iowa Children's Hospital this spring. They are in the process of planning various activities to do with patients and are making cards and artwork for those at the hospital as well. Soon we will be starting the yearly process of student council interviews for next year's council. Information will be sent to middle school and high school students in the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Before you ladies slip away, does anyone on the board have any questions for our student council? Are you in need of volunteer chaperones for prom?
I don't think so. We're usually pretty set on prom.
All right, you might have some takers up here. If you need somebody, this is a good audience to ask. So there you go. I even see some heads nod, so, all right.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. We appreciate the update. Next up on our agenda is our employee recognition. And Jerry, I think, am I passing that to? I'm passing it to Jill.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, Becky Witchers is out of town today, so I'm stepping in for her. Just to kind of review, the Muscatine Community School District Employee Recognition Award is for those employees who go above and beyond on a continual basis for students, staff, and/or parents. Nominations can come from the community, parents, staff members, and students. The district will be recognizing employees monthly in their buildings as well as at the televised board meetings such as this evening. The district would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you, pardon me, and congratulate April's Best of the Best at MCSD. Our first recipient could not be with us tonight. Her name is Beth Gomez. She is a building aide at Grant Elementary, nominated by Jesse Freers, and this is what Jesse had to say about Beth. Beth has been a volunteer at Grant for many years. The past year, she took a supervision and office coverage position at Grant during the noon hour. While Beth is now an employee of the district, she continues to come in several times a week to volunteer in classrooms and pop our weekly attendance incentive popcorn for us. She continues to not only be a great volunteer, but a great employee of the Muscatine Community School District. Our next recipient is Marcia Shingledecker. Marcia, if you'll come forward, please. Marcia is the benefits accountant at the Administration Center, and she was nominated by Anna Raymond. Anna says, it's only fitting that Marcia Shingledecker is nominated for recognition because it's as if each employee Marcia works with is being recognized fully each moment by Marcia. Marcia is always so welcoming, compassionate, and ready with a smile or a kind, uplifting word. Benefits, leaves of absence, or workers' compensation claims are not always easy situations, but there's no personality more perfect for these experiences than Marcia's. She is excellent within that department. Marcia's work ethic is also excellent. She's diligent, conscientious, and detailed. Marvelous Marcia truly has a heart of gold and a sparkly disposition, and we are all very blessed to have her in our employ.
Not many people may know, but Marcia also sings to our new employees their benefits. So they not only get their information, they get a sideshow as well.
Our next nominee is Belen Marquez. She could not be here with us tonight. She is an English language learners paraeducator at Muscatine High School. She was nominated by Marisol Medina. And Marisol says Belen is an English language learner paraeducator at Muscatine High School. She is a great person to work with, and she is always going above and beyond for the students. Belen will stay after her workday has ended to work with students when they are in need of extra one-on-one time. She is a person anyone may rely on and willing to help out in any way. The kids really enjoy working with her because she is honest with them and shows how she cares for their education. Pardon me, our next recipient is Galia Spenner, a behavior disabilities teacher at Central Middle School. She was also unable to be with us tonight. She was nominated by Ashley Patterson Martinez, and here is what Ashley had to say. Ms. Spenner goes above and beyond for her students every day. She works every day with students who face enormous difficulties at home, yet they feel very comfortable to talk with her about what is going on in their life. She really gets to know her students and the lives they live at home. She never gives up on a student and truly wants the best for them. She also has great communication with the students' parents, which I know the parents truly appreciate. I came from working with preschool-aged children for years to a whole new ballgame with middle schoolers. Ms. Spenner has been the perfect coworker to help me learn and grow with the skills and knowledge that she has. No matter what is going on in her personal life, she comes to work every day with a positive go-to attitude. She is truly passionate about her work and her students. If we could all have a Ms. Spenner at our school, I think our lives would be that much better off. And our last recipient, Carrie Delzell. Carrie is a paraeducator at Jefferson Elementary. She was nominated by Kristen Hazlett. Kristen says Carrie goes above and beyond with supporting and implementing my son's IEP. She makes herself available outside of contract hours to be a part of planning for his success. She has immeasurable patience and professionalism. She is in a position where she is tested often. I know she will make the right decisions for my son and the other kids she works with. She is an asset to Jefferson and a blessing to our family.
Congratulations to all those that were recognized for the month of April, and thank you for those that submit nominations as well. We appreciate that. Our next item on our agenda is under Board Targets and Goals Report. And there are three pieces that we key into. Students will graduate prepared for post-secondary options. Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably. And students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. And so tonight, we're going to review some ACT data. And Mike, I think you're going to walk us through that.
Thanks a lot, President Caldwell. This evening also will present with me is Chris Nienhaus. He's oversees our district testing as well. So we're going to both share, kind of give you an update on, and you should have the presentation in front of you as well, so if you want to follow along. And then at the end, we'll open it up for questions if the board would have any questions. But I wanted to first kind of give the board a reminder of our testing process. Right now, we do Aspire, which is a test that is geared towards preparing students for the ACT, as well as ensuring that our students have the Iowa standards, the Common Core standards. With that, we do that 3 through 9. And then at the 10th grade, we have something new this year where it's actually a pre-ACT. So it's a practice ACT. Before it was an Aspire test. And then at the 11th grade, as the board knows, all of our juniors take the ACT. So that's kind of a process, that our testing process. And this year, what our statistics show is that when you look, some of the things that we're really excited about is first of all, looking at just our overall average went up 0.5 from 19 to 19.5. And then when you break it down a little bit more and you look at our top 20%, our top 50%, and then also in our top 60%, you can see that all those scores went up fairly significantly compared to 2017. So for example, our kids that are in the top 60% went from 20.7 to 21.9. So each one of those went up as well. And then when you break it down also, when you're looking at your 20%, your 55%, and 60%, when you get down to 60%, you're really including a lot of kids in the middle, which is really exciting. You can see that they're actually doing a little bit better than the state average. Their average is 21.9. Our state average is 21.8. So when we look at the number of our students that go on to post-secondary, it's always right around 60%. So that's why we kind of took that number. So we're excited about that. And then I think the other thing when you start breaking it down too is that 60% of our students, and Chris is kind of going to share out a little bit more about this, is 60% of our students, when you look at how they're doing as far as college readiness, a lot of those students are going to college, being college ready. So we're really excited about that as well. Before I turn it over to Chris, one other thing I wanted to point out on our next slide, it compares, and I kind of like this chart because you get an idea of how we kind of compare to other schools in the state. So what we did is we took 11 other comparable schools and compared how we do, and I should say comparable by demographics. And we looked at how we do compared to how other school districts with comparable demographics do in the state of Iowa. And you can kind of see by your chart that we compare very favorably to other districts. We're second out of the 11. The only one that's ahead of us would be Iowa City High. So one of the things there is when you take our top 47%, we're at our composite's 22.3. So again, above the state average of 21.8. So that's something we're kind of excited about when you get a chance, because it's a little bit hard for us to compare sometimes our ACT scores to other schools because we're one of the few that actually require all students to take the ACT. So we thought a good way of breaking it down would be just comparing to similar schools and then looking at what percent they actually test as well. With that, I'll turn it over to Chris. He's going to walk you through and kind of break down the ACT statistics a little bit more.
Yeah. So one other thing on this slide, I think that's 47% is what we're comparing, but we test about 85% of our students. So we don't quite get them all, but we offer it to all. So some students that are absent and don't get the makeup done, whatever. So we do about 85% of our students, which is by far and away one of the top in the state of Iowa. So the next slide then just kind of breaks it down a little bit further. So if we look at the top 30% of our students in accordance to their GPA, and if they hit the benchmark scores in each of the 4 areas. So our top 30%, 87% of those students meet the benchmark in English, 61% math, 65 reading, and 67 in science. So you can see if you go to the top 50% of our students, then numbers go down a little bit, but all of those are still above the national average, which is very good. So the next one, we really wanted to see how, as you guys know, we have a pretty strong pre-AP program that we've instituted over the last 4 or 5 years. So we have students starting in the 5th grade that will be in pre-AP classes if they choose. So what we wanted to do is compare the scores of students that took those courses at least one of those courses in those areas against students that didn't. And so, as you can see, if a student took a pre-AP course in English, their average score in that area is 23.9, whereas if they did not take a pre-AP class or an AP class in that area, it's 16.6. So you can see that there's a pretty significant difference in the kids that are taking those classes versus the ones that aren't, and the scores that they get. And that's pre-AP or AP courses.
And Chris,
in
just,
those areas.
most people are probably aware of this, but there is no restriction on who can take an AP course. Any student in the high school can take an AP course.
Correct. Yep. Pre-AP or AP. Yep. And then we wanted to break it down by demographic a little bit more. And so you can see we're seeing some growth in this area as well. So you can look at last year's composite scores almost across the board versus this year's in those areas have all increased. So we're seeing a pretty good increase in scores by demographic as well, which is really encouraging. And lastly, students that take the test multiple times tend to do much better. So we really think that with the change this year as well, so we have students grades 3 through 9 that will be taking the pre-ACT Aspire test and building their skills through that. Then the pre-ACT that we changed to instead of the Aspire this year really is a practice ACT test. It's very similar to the test. So Aspire is a little bit different, and the pre-ACT is very similar to the test. So they take 3 through 9, the ACT Aspire, build their skills. 10, they get a practice test. Grade 11, then we pay for the test. But students that go on and take that test again, 67, almost 68% of the students will do better the second time they take the test. So we really encourage that when we sit the kids down and talk to them about their ACT. We want, if they haven't taken it before we give it to them their junior year, we really encourage them to take this the first time and then sign back up in the June or October dates to take it again, because we know that statistically speaking that their score is going to go up. Okay, that's all we have. Is there questions about this?
Chris, can you remind us the cost of the ACT, of taking the ACT exam, roughly?
Yeah, it's about can't tell you exactly, $44, $45, something like that per student for the ACT, right?
So it's by the time though we do it for, and even if our goal is to hit 100% of that junior class, and we hit 85%, it's still a significant investment to make sure that all of our students, that they're not held back from taking the ACT.
Oh yeah, significant investment, not only in the ACT, but the ACT Aspire is about $25 per student. So if you did that 3 through 10, you're talking about a really large investment in preparing the kids to take these tests.
Do we have any numbers that would help us understand in both the pre-AP and the non-pre-AP what the breakdown would be between those who may be considered gifted and talented and those who are enrolled in an IEP type classroom setting, and then those students who are in either the gifted and talented or have an IEP?
I don't think we have those offhand. I think that is something that we could probably generate by a breakdown of the scores that they give us, but I don't think we have anything specifically that speak to that right now, no.
It's certainly not comprised primarily of gifted and talented kids, though.
Oh, no, not at all. I think that you have the total number of students that took the test. I don't think we have the total number of students that are enrolled in our pre-AP and AP, but I want to say that's about 800 seats this past year. So, and I think that if you go back in time 5 or 6 years ago, we had about 140 seats in AP or pre-AP. So 800 seats is a pretty significant population of our high school that are taking one or more AP or pre-AP class. So, and again, we really encourage, we know that those courses are they have a national certified curriculum, and we know that them being successful or even attempting those courses are going to better prepare them in a post-secondary setting.
And this question may be not applicable to what we're discussing here, but I do know there are a number of students who are paying to take what I would call practice AC tests. Do we know the percentages of those students that when we are paying for the test, how many of them have done a number of tests prior to that to help prepare for stronger scores? Because I think that's one of the things that we are hearing, and some of my friends are saying, oh, my child's taking it for the 4th time. His scores are constantly improving, and how that may affect the numbers that we have with those students who can afford to take the additional practice test versus those students who can't afford it, but yet, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that it's really their personal choice, so we don't really keep track of that data if they go and do it. There's lots of different programs out there to increase your ACT score. So we have in the past, though, we built a program into the high school over our MTSS time or over the lunch hour where students had the opportunity to take a free session to help improve their scores. And then we did that over about 2 months prior to the test, so they could come in 2 or 3 times a week. We'd give them practice tests there. We'd go through the skills that they need there. We'd have our core teachers would show up and walk through how to do specific problems that we knew would be prevalent on the ACT test. So we have built that in actually to our system.
That's really what I was getting at, because of the fact we all know of the scandals that have been going on, and it seems that I just wanted to make sure that those students who economically couldn't afford.
Yeah, absolutely.
We feel like that does level.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear, so thank you.
Chris and Mike, whoever can answer that. Based on the data that you are providing us with, we know that around, or a little bit more than 80% of our students are taking that. We know that the district is paying. My question is about those who are not taking. Do we know why? Did we ever ask them why, since the district is paying even for that? Do we have some reasons, please?
Yeah, so there's a couple things with that. I think, number one, some of our special ed students are exempt or don't take the test because they're on alternative assessment situations, so that takes that percentage down. But really, ACT has some pretty strict guidelines. So if they don't show up for that state testing, that district testing day, then they only have one other day to take that test. So this year we were actually in a little bit of a bind because we had a snow day on the initial test date. So that pushed us into the makeup date. So the students only had one opportunity. So it's a combination of both of those things, I think.
Thank you.
And John, also, if you get to 89%, they consider that, the ACT consider that 100% of your school tested. So they always expect a certain percentage won't, for the reasons kind of Chris cited.
Thank you.
You guys did a great job, and I just want to reiterate that this district is unique in that we made a commitment to test everyone. And, when I was in grad school, I had a stats professor that had this joke, or at least he thought it was a joke, that about the statistician who drowned in the river that averages 3 inches in depth. A number does not tell the story, and that's why tonight it was really nice to be able to look at, our top third or top half of kids, they are improving. But what we were looking at is how do we expand opportunities for every student? We knew that our average score would go down. And we really had to say, I think kids' potential, kids' future is more important than that. And so I think this speaks well for the community, but the community should take a great deal of pride in that we put kids before numbers.
And Jerry, you really brought like very important point because, a lot of people try to depend and make decisions based on an average, and statistically speaking, the average doesn't tell us much unless you connect that to some sort of a distribution and dispersion of that average and start looking at this data. So thank you for giving us more specifics tonight. Thank you.
I think Aaron had something.
Aaron?
I do have a question, yes. So the goal, I think, of starting to pay for the test for all the students was to encourage post-secondary sort of participation. Do we have any results of, now that we are paying for everyone, how many more have maybe applied or gone on to? Has it a sort of the outcome that we expected? Have we seen that?
While Mike and Chris are comparing notes, it was not only though to improve percentage of kids that are attending post-secondary, but we also, really the key was we wanted to improve the rigor of the high school program. So that drove really the AP work, the pre-AP work, and using ACT testing, because we wanted to make sure that our high school curriculum was as rigorous and as possible. So the side effect of that is that more kids should be ready for college. I don't have anything right in front of me, but I would say that from anecdotal records, I would say we're hearing more and more kids feeling they are more than prepared when they go to their freshman year in college. And that was not the case 5, 6, 7 years ago. And Chris, you were at the high school. Mike, you were at the high school. You could probably speak better to that than I can.
Yeah, and I haven't seen any recent clearinghouse data, but, when 5 or 6 years ago, what we found out after we delved into that was that only about 75 kids or so that graduated were going on to receive a 2 or 4 year college degree after 6 years. And so, again, I don't know if we have any updated clearinghouse information on that. Mike would probably know the answer to that, but we knew that there was an issue. We only had 75 students that were getting a college degree after a 6 year period, so that was one of the reasons why we addressed this. Yeah.
And that's some information that I think we can garner, and we'd be happy to bring forward, because I think we are seeing an improvement in kids going on to post-secondary. So
definitely more prepared, the ones that are going.
Chris and Mike.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for us to, help students who may not think I think the words we used before were, either afford the test or think that the test is even available to them, or that post-secondary is an option, and we're going to use this as a way to have that conversation with them. And so I think it would be great for us to understand what has happened to, even if it's 2 or 4 years, or what the application rate is, or something like that, to see if we're having, even anecdotal, do we have a handful of students that have come back and told us, had you not given me that test, or had I not taken that test, I probably would have never thought to go on to, a 2 or a 4 year or trade, whatever that might be. So I think it'd be good to measure, those impacts if we could.
Guys, with there's no doubt there's a lot of great numbers in here, but it wouldn't be a board meeting unless I'm raining on someone's parade. There's a pretty secular downturn in the reading scores. For everybody with a C average and above, with one exception, the scores are down from last year. What are we taking from that? What are we doing to address that? What do we think needs to happen?
Well, one thing I would to keep in mind, that those are 2 different groups of kids.
Sure.
And so that would be.
But they're getting better at the other things. I'm just wondering what's going on with reading.
Well, no, and that's a good point. And at that level, it is all about the comprehension. So one thing, and I would this would be a theory. As our free and reduced price numbers go up, that one of the things that absolutely kills those kids in their comprehension work is their lack of vocabulary and lack of experience. And as you get into something like the ACT, vocabulary, background experience, makes a difference. I'm not saying that's necessarily the only problem there, but it is something that you see across all of our grade levels, that kids that are coming from a disadvantaged background, really, we can get them up to reading, decoding words pretty well. It's after third grade on, the burden of lack of vocabulary really slows them down. And that is something we need to continue to work at. And it's one of the things, quite truthfully, I'm hopeful with the Early Learning Center, where we can have a concentrated effort on increasing some of those things and trying to erase that. Right now, there's a deficit of about 10,000 words in a kindergartner's vocabulary that comes to us from poverty or from a family of affluence. 10,000 words as a kindergartner is a lot. And so that might be one thing. Other than that, I don't have a good response for you.
I think if I was looking at it, probably Nathan, how I'd look at it is, if you look at the large picture, just say you go up the 3.0, 3.49, you'll see reading scores go up, even their overall composite score. So I think there are ones that have gone down, but most on average have probably gone up. Even in reading, a lot of those areas have gone up or they're really close. So I don't know if I would take one GPA and say you can draw much from that, I guess, if you take one area of GPA.
Lastly, I'd just like to thank Brett Nelson, the general manager at Musco. They've allowed us to use their dome for a facility to test our students in, and I mean, they go out of their way to make that happen for us. Unfortunately, I think this is probably the last year they're going to be expanding down there and having to change some of the dynamic. But I really did want to send a public thank you to him and his team, because they really went out of their way to help make a great environment for our students.
And I bet the lighting was great.
Mike and Chris, thank you very much for that data.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is a discussion of a possible curriculum audit. And Jerry, I think you're going to share some information with us.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this for a couple of months, and I after last month's meeting, I spent some time pondering some of the questions, and I think I think an audit is going to be really important for the district, can be really important for the board, but I really do think it needs to be the board's audit. And I think the public would really appreciate that. I think it would be, it's important that the board's questions get answered. So I thought before we would go down the road of the board identifying or contracting with someone, that it might be good for the board to either form a subcommittee or a committee of some sort of board members and have the conversation with the audit for term to make sure that you're getting what you want, because the audit is not for me, it's not for other staff, it's really important for the board. And so I thought before we went too much farther down the road on this, that I thought it'd be good for the board to have that conversation about how they would like to proceed.
What are the thoughts of the board?
I'd be supportive of a subcommittee to be formed from the board.
I agree with that too, because, as we have been talking about that, I think if it comes from the board, it will carry different weight to that, to this audit. So I'm definitely in support of that too.
And I would tend to agree with the idea that the audit should be conducted by the board and for the board, so that we can set the policies and practices that will move us forward. And because I think, first of all, we have already been elected by the community, and I believe when that happens, they have entrusted to us their desires and beliefs in us, and I think we as a board are up for that. You know, as I look at my fellow board members, I think all of us have an understanding of where we are and where we would like to be. And so I do agree also that a subcommittee of the board to work towards those goals would be perfect, because I think 7 of us right now, it would be confusing, and we just compound things. And if we had 3 or 4 people who worked on it for us and then came back to the board or kept us informed as we're going on and allowed us input, it would be a very valuable tool for what we need to be looking at.
Anyone else? So do we need to put that on for an action item for our next meeting, or are we able
Yeah,
to act on?
You know, interested board members could contact Lisa. And Lisa could just kind of keep the board informed as to who's had some interest. What number, let's see.
Can't have more than 4.
It's got to be, say,
right.
3 or less.
Three or less, so, but I think that might be the easiest to do that way, maybe. And then, yeah, you certainly could make it an action item and go the other route, but I think you could also do it this way.
Okay, so board members that would be interested and have the time for said subcommittee or interest, if you want to let Lisa know, and she can help us compile that information along with next steps. Good, okay. Anything else on the audit, Dr. Ruby?
No, thank you.
All right. Next up is our consent agenda. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. Those items are minutes, employment recommendations, bills and claims, and special education contracts. What are the wishes of the board?
I would move the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. That takes us to the approval of the proposed plans, specification, proposed form of contract, and the estimated cost of said improvements for Madison Elementary parking lot student drop-off reconfiguration project. And I will just add one that's a mouthful, and it feels like, didn't we just do that in the beginning of the meeting? Part of our requirement is to have to allow the public hearing. So if the public has input, that is the time during a meeting to do that. Now then is when we actually, as a board, approve that plan. And Jerry, I think you're going to kick us off.
Well, I think we have an individual from IBENG that can maybe walk us through that, so.
Hello, my name is Mike Janisek. I'm a licensed civil engineer in Iowa. I work for IMEG in Rock Island. I'm also a city engineer in Bluegrass and Buffalo, some of your neighbors, so you do a lot of work in Iowa. This project, as you know, is at Madison Elementary, comes off First Avenue and Polk Street. It's an access road with a detention pond, 17 parking stalls. We've done all the surveying and engineering to prepare the plans to put out for bid, and they're ready to be put out for bid if they would be approved tonight. The plan would be to immediately have it out for bid this week if it's approved. We would take bids on May 1st at school district office at 4 p.m. And then at that point, we would hope we would get some good bids. We would then award it to the recommended contractor. They would start construction June 10th and complete it by July 31st, so when school is out, we should be able to get this work done. We have a construction cost estimate of approximately $203,000 with about approximately $5,000 for construction staking. And in addition, that does not include landscaping. There's some landscaping requirements from the city. I think Jeff was working on getting a bid for that. I haven't seen those numbers. I think that would be like in the $5,000 to $10,000 range, something like that. And that's separate from these. That'll be like a separate item that you'll see in the near future. But it's concrete pavement. There's 6 trees that have to be removed. Everything drains to the southwest along Polk Street. There's a detention pond over there, kind of west of the proposed improvements. And everything drains to that point. The detention pond is a dry detention pond, so 99% of the time there won't be any water in it. Just if it's raining very, very heavily, there would be a little bit of water in there. There's a storm sewer that leaves that pond that would slow that water down so we don't release any more water to the storm sewer system as prior to development. And then there's also some sidewalk improvements and there's a pedestrian ramps at the sidewalk crossings of the new roadway, and there's a sidewalk connection up to the existing sidewalks of the school. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions or go into more details if you would prefer.
Mike, I'm a little confused. I'm not sure the drawing we have matches this, because I don't see that, on our drawing, I don't see that diagonal walk going from the building to the parking lot. We've got, it looks like a north-south walk there.
Sure. It was originally set up that way, and then when we ran all the numbers, it was going to require steps, and we decided we wanted to make it not have steps and to meet the requirements of ADA, so we went at an angle instead to the southeast there to meet those requirements.
Got it. Thank you.
The detention pond, so,
Naughty kids.
right, it's traditionally dry, you said?
Yes.
So a place to take care of excess runoff.
Right.
Is there somewhere, I'm going to put you on the spot, is there somewhere in Muscatine that we have a detention pond now?
Jefferson Elementary. They put it in, the high school has one too.
So where's the one at the high school?
Out in front where the science addition's going as you come in the new road.
So when it's in,
You didn't realize it.
I would say when it's in place, you don't even know it's there.
Right.
Exactly.
It's easily, it's easy to maintain. It'll be green. Everything will be grass around it. Like I said, 99% of the time it's dry, no issues. But, if it is raining hard, there's going to be a little bit of water in it. It's a normal thing. It's required by city ordinance, and that's why you're basically being a good neighbor to your downstream neighbors. You're slowing the water down so you're not causing any flooding issues. So any of your water, because of the impervious area that you're adding as part of your project, civil engineer runs the calculations and slows it down, and we release it at equivalent or less than the rate that it would have been to meet the city engineer's requirements.
So what's the square footage on the pavement?
I've got that here.
Is it about 3,200? Is that what it's looking like?
There's 1,100 square yards of concrete pavement.
Yards, yeah.
That's of the 6-inch pavement of the roadway. There's also sidewalk. The sidewalk, there's 388 square yards of PCC sidewalk.
And this will be one-way, correct?
One-way traffic, I should have said that earlier, I apologize. Coming off First and then coming in from First, leaving on Polk. And it's angled parking because of that one-way.
That's a good amount of ditch all the way through there. And do you have to do a lot of backfilling? Is there going to be a lot of fill going there?
There is some fill, but it's not a lot. We did our best to minimize that. There is 800 yards of fill, and there's 1,100 and change of cubic yards of cut and regrading there. So it's a little bit of fill, but not in a huge excessive amount.
And the 17 spots in front those are all new spots.
That is correct.
Do we know what we have? How much do we gain? How many spots do we gain? Do we know?
Sure, what the principal, and I've worked with her,
Street.
we've worked closely with Stephanie, the principal over at Madison. And what we're trying to eliminate is the parking in that front area to keep that open. The other idea of this is along that sidewalk there, Madison does something kind of neat. They have a number system like they used to do at Washington for pickups. And so the kids will line up at each numbered station. They'll have somebody, which would be to the east, a staff member, and they line the kids up so they move the cars in and out. So the idea behind this is that'll be mostly staff parking. You still have the back lot that's never full. So with the additional students, we're trying to alleviate lining up a lot of cars down the front and around the corner. I think when Jerry and I were over there about 2 years ago, we witnessed they're blocking, access to driveways and stuff, so.
It really causes a problem for neighbors in that area with the queuing of traffic, and this will also help with some of the parking, getting some of the parking off the street, because that causes quite a bit of problems for neighbors in the area. So I think the term being a good neighbor on the runoff, we're also being a good neighbor with trying to get some additional off-street parking.
Any other questions for Mike or Jeff? What are the wishes of the board?
Well, I move to approve the proposed plans, specification, proposed form of contract, and the estimated cost of said improvements for the Madison Elementary parking lot.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the proposed plans, the specification, the proposed form of contract, and the estimated cost. Is there any other discussion? Excuse me. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Gentlemen, thank you again very much. Next on our agenda, and we have a couple of different items that are going to be addressed by this same individual, I believe, and that is the approval of the purchase of 2 maintenance trucks. And Ryan, I think you're going to, we could ask you any questions that we have. Is that a true statement? Is there anything that you specifically would like the board to be aware of on this item? And I'm going to ask if you'll step to the mic, because at home, no one can hear you. We can hear you, but...
That's fine. And Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the last maintenance truck that we purchased was in 2012. So it's been 7 years since a new maintenance truck has been purchased. The 2 maintenance trucks that we would like to purchase will replace 2 vehicles that have already been out of our system due to mechanical issues. Snow removal, lawn mowing, salting, lots of things that are going to happen with these 2 maintenance trucks.
Okay.
So
the 2 that are not in circulation right now, are we keeping those for parts, or
no,
are we...
they're already gone.
Oh, they're gone.
They're
Okay.
already gone. Yeah, that one was a 1998, and the other one was a 1999, give or take. So.
Do we take bids on these?
Yeah, we had 4 bids come in. Krieger's happened to be the low bid that I received. We had River City Ford, Lindquist Ford, and Mincer Ford all also submitted bids. There was a difference of about $700 between all 4 bids. So
I guess I'd like to see bids on large ticket items like this.
yeah, and the bids were submitted. You should be seeing the bids.
These are
The
Go ahead.
summaries in the board.
Maybe I missed it in my
the board
packet, I'm
packet.
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there should be an Excel spreadsheet with all the
Oh,
bids.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
No, no problem.
Good.
What are the wishes of the board on the 2 maintenance trucks?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the purchase of the 2 new maintenance trucks as presented. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. I will also say we appreciate our local vendors. We are required to go with the low bid, and while several of the bidders that you mentioned are really in our backyard, for those that are right in our yard, I'm glad that we're able to award that business to Krieger. So we appreciate their support of the district as well. The next item, you're not off the hook yet, Ryan. The next item is to approve the purchase of 5 buses from school bus sales. This is the amount of $519,584. We'll be using capital project funds will be used for the purchase, and we would push this out after July 1, which for us puts us into a different fiscal cycle.
Both these purchases, the trucks and the buses, will be in fiscal '20. And I just have one correction. Because the short wheelbase lift equipped bus is for special ed purposes only, we are going to use special education funds for that.
Okay, for one of the
Or
buses,
just
correct?
the one bus, yeah. And that would take our total, our budget is for 515,000, so the total of these two combined purchases is 508, so we fall within that for capital projects. So
And I'm sorry, Tom, you said it's the wheelbase that is
I'll let Ryan
shorter, which
explain.
allows for the lift. Is that correct?
So a short wheelbase bus basically enables us to get into some apartment complexes that we cannot get in with a full-size bus. So if you look at a full-size bus, fairly significant in length, especially our new 77-passenger buses, there are apartment complexes and streets in this town that we cannot get our buses down. The short wheelbase buses allows us to get into some more spots and therefore be compliant with IEP purposes.
Okay.
And Ryan, what is our need in the next year or so for
So-
wheelchair-equipped buses?
Right. Currently, we have 2 wheelchair-bound students in the district. By the end of next year, we're looking at 8, if not 10, wheelchair-bound students. So that's a significant increase for us, especially when you look at spread out all over from Mount Pillier to to almost the Cedar River. So we need to look at addressing those needs. That's why out of those 5 buses, 3 of the full-size buses will have wheelchair lifts. We'll have the short wheelbase bus will have a wheelchair lift, and then 1 regular bus. Our wheelchair buses are getting up in age. We have 2 2005 wheelchair buses, a 2009 wheelchair bus, and then 1 2016 wheelchair bus. So the new buses would replace the 05s, which really are not very efficient for us and have some undercarriage issues as well. So just kind of bringing us up in current technology, the short wheelbase bus allows us to get to some of those apartment buildings that we cannot get to right now.
Ryan, the short wheel, how many passengers?
It's
you can fit on
it's a 33 passenger one. So the way that we had it, and you guys, if you have any questions, we have Dwight here as well, who's a representative of Bluebird. Okay. So that bus has a 33 passenger rating, but the way that we spec'd it out, we'll have spots for 3 wheelchairs. That enables us to do a lot more things with that bus.
Okay, thank you.
And these are propane buses or not?
So the 4 full-size buses will be propane buses. The short wheelbase bus, it's really not effective to have a propane bus in that because of the tank size and usable tank size. So that would be a gasoline engine. Just to kind of bring you, I was doing some calculations today with our propane buses and to kind of further solidify why we're moving in this direction. So we've had propane buses since 2016. Our first propane transaction was February 28th of 2016. Since that time, we've used about 82,000 gallons of propane. So that cost savings between a propane bus and a diesel bus has saved us about $73,000 in fuel costs. Additionally, if you look at the EPA ratings, we put about 116 tons less of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And that's basically working with 10 propane buses. We now have 18. This will bring us up to for a higher percentage, I apologize.
And if you count in maintenance savings,
Maintenance
it'd be
savings,
phenomenal.
so each oil change, we save 10 quarts of oil for oil change. So if you look at 5 times a year for a diesel bus, so we're looking at a significant cost savings in maintenance costs, as well as propane buses don't have a catalyst which needs to be replaced. Right now, we look at about $5,000 to $6,000 per catalyst when it replaces. We replace about 2 to 3 a bus.
Would it have been possible to bid the short wheelbase bus separately?
Yeah, I suppose it probably would have. When we sent out for bids, we didn't get any other bids back besides.
Give us a partial on that.
Right.
Yeah. How many are we looking at purchasing in the following fiscal year? What's on the schedule?
So, we've talked about that. I think it's 3 buses and 2 vans a year now.
Yeah, well, I'd like to get to a point where we can continually replace 3 buses a year. That would put our fleet at about 12 years of age, which would eliminate some of the issues we're having now with rust prevention.
And Ryan, just for point of comparison, how many buses do we have in our entire fleet?
We're at 40 right now,
Okay.
so 18 are currently propane. That includes that will include our 2 short wheelbase buses.
So 5
5,
sounds like
yeah.
a lot. I mean, just in
Yeah, no,
comparison,
I
but when there's
completely understand.
40 that it takes to run our district, we have a lot of geography to cover.
We do.
It's
We're about
a
255,000 miles a year.
But you think after this year, we'll ease into
After
that
this
3
year, I would like to ease into the three buses per year, yes. And the only reason right now that I'm asking for 5 is because of the significant increase in wheelchair-bound students.
Sure. I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the purchase of the 5 buses in the total of, and did I hear, it is the $519,584,
Yes.
correct? Want to make sure that amount right. To go ahead and approve those 5 buses, and again, that would be for purchase after July 1, so that puts us into the next fiscal year.
Right.
Is there any additional discussion?
Thanks for Brian.
Thank you, guys.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Ryan, thank you very much for that. All right, next on our agenda is to approve certifying the budget for the 2019-2020 school year. We have a levy rate, we have a budget amount. Again, we started off our meeting with a public hearing to allow any input and to allow the board to receive comments. Now is the time that Tom's going to take us through an approval.
Yeah. Okay, so included in your board book then are 6 documents that we're going to go through. Some of them we saw at the work session we had in February, and so I'm just going to review those. One is one that I meant to present at that work session but didn't get that done in time because of unforeseen circumstances, and then review of our capital projects list. So the first document is the proposed levy rates and then a comparison of the last 3 years. And so you will notice that our levy rate is declining by about $1 per $1,000 of valuation, and that is because of several reasons. One is we do not have the budget guarantee in our property tax levy this year because of a combination of 2 things. Our enrollment declined only around 60 or 40, I can't remember which one, 40. Yeah, so our certified enrollment reduced by 40, and we received 2.06 SSA. So I think if we were just under 2%, we would have been on the budget guarantee, but that's where it stands now. So that is one reason, and you can see how last year in fiscal 19, when we had $972,000, that was about 75 cents right there. So, and then moving on down there, the general fund, we still do not have a cash reserve levy built in our budget next year, and that is simply because, we're at the limit of what we can have for cash reserve, and we know that. So that is something that maybe will get built in a future years, but for next year, we're not going to implement or put one in because we cannot. So you see there our general fund levy rate. And remember, our levy rate that we're certifying is our total levy rate between all of the taxing funds. So the general fund, management fund, capital projects, and debt service. So our general fund levy rate, there's only X amount that we can levy in the general fund because of, students, number of students times cost per pupil, and then we add in those additional levy things. One of them being the instructional support levy. And so I will point out that that particular levy will expire at June 30th, 23. So it's been a 10-year voter-approved instructional support levy. So, we're not crazy to think we're not that far away from 2023. So it's something that we need to start thinking about the process that we want to take with that. We don't need to talk about it tonight, but I just wanted to point that out, that levy does expire in 2023. And we can talk about, it generates almost $2 million in property tax, plus there's an income surtax portion too. And we can look at that on another support document I have. So the management fund levy rate, remember that supports our insurance, liability insurance and workers' comp and so forth, early retirement. So that is roughly the same next year as it is this year. And then there's our two PEPL, board-approved 33 cent, and then our voter-approved $1.34. And that voter-approved PEPL expires in 6/30/2030, so we extended that a few years ago. So, and then we obviously do not have a debt service levy. So,
Tom, I'm sorry, do you know, now that the law with election dates has changed, if a special election held to recertify the instructional support levy would take place on the normal election day, or would it still be bound to a special election day?
No, you could have it on like the election this coming November.
Right, but it no longer needs its own special day, is I guess what I
It
meant.
does not need their own special day. You
Right.
can do it on a special election day, but yeah, with the election being, city and school combined, it's going to be interesting how that all shakes out. So, all right. So the next document is going to be just the proposed Muscatine school budget summary, and that was just the document that was posted in the paper. So I have nothing really to point out on this document other than maybe you look down the right-hand column where it says the average percent increase over 3 years, and you look clear down to other expenditures increased by over 50%, and that's simply because of our planning of capital projects. So, timing is important on capital projects, and sometimes with the fiscal year ending in the middle of a summer when a lot of projects happen, that can, kind of, what do you budget for? Do you increase more than what you think you're going to spend? So that's kind of why over the last 3 years you'll see the 50% increase. The next 2 pages are just kind of that tool that we use across the state of Iowa for school districts to build our budget by fund. So what you see here on these next 2 budgets are our fiscal year 20 budget worksheets. A lot of it is pre-populated because of property tax and state aid, because we already know what those figures are, and then we plug in other grants and such that we get, and then do an estimate on our expenditures. So those are the 2 FY20 budget documents that we use. The next page is going to be our adoption of budget and taxes, which we will recommend approving for tonight, and this is what we give or certify or basically take to the county auditor. So the next document is a UAB forecast. So this is something that I presented last year at our budget work session, and essentially if you look at this, there's 3 years actual, then there's the gray column for fiscal 2019, which is the current year we're in, And then there's the 3 blue columns, and those are the projections. And I'm really actually focusing on that fiscal 2020 because obviously that's our next fiscal year. So the things in the top part there, if you look on the far left-hand side where it says aid and levy, those things are all taken from our document. There's nothing, we don't manipulate those at all. It's all based on our enrollment and what we get per pupil. The gold section all across all columns those are those things that we do kind of have control over. The dropout prevention and our SBRC modified supplemental amounts. And those are those things that we come back in the fall to request additional authority for. And so next year, we're just kind of estimating about the same as what they've been the last few years. And then if you look down on line 26, that is our maximum district cost. So that is basically that formula where it takes our enrollment times the district cost per pupil, adds in all those other things that we levy for at risk, our estimated SBRC amounts, so $49.2 million for next year. Then we add in our preschool foundation aid, and then there's that instructional support levy, so that's about how much we generate in authority with the instructional support levy. And part of that is property tax, and you saw that on the first page where it's around $2 million. The rest is a 1% income surtax, and that's just from the language in the instructional support resolution that was approved 7 years ago or whatever. That was the board decided how that was going to be funded, I guess. So a real important line to see here is line 30, and that's the miscellaneous income. So miscellaneous income is that dollar for dollar spending that we get. We get donations in the general fund. We get grants, any federal grant that we get is strictly miscellaneous income because we know we're going to get the revenue and we're going to have that exact expenditure. So, and then we take into consideration our carryover. So we're estimating our unspent authorized budget at the end of fiscal 19 to be around 11.7 million. So that will carry over to next year to generate approximately $68 million is our maximum authorized budget. And then our expenditures are, again, an estimate. We typically estimate our expenses going up 2% a year based on several factors, which is settlements and then just inflation, I guess. So you can see next year we're going to end up approximately where we're at this year, difference of $600,000, I would say, on a $57 million budget that ending up at 11 million is still in that position where we want to be. And then, as I said before, our best projections are 1 year out, but obviously we do need to look out more than 1 year. And that's kind of what this document does then, and it uses, I believe, we don't know what state aid is going to be for 21 and 22. We can only guesstimate. We guesstimate 1% on the conservative side. We estimate a decline in enrollment of maybe around 50 students. So those are the things that we don't know, but we have to use something in our projections. And then obviously our expenditures we look at them increasing 2% a year, but we also, as we are for next year, trying to reduce our budget by about $500,000. And we feel like we can do that through, like we've been doing in the past, through attrition, not replacing staff that leave, because 86% of our budget is salary and benefits, so that's where we're going to get most of our savings. We did try to look at non-salary and benefits this last year, and we We implemented a print management system, if you remember approving that way back in October, so that's gonna have an effect of around $60,000 in our general fund. So that's gonna be helpful for next year. So between those two things, we feel like we can meet that goal then. And you can see there at the very bottom then is our projected solvency ratio and our UAB. We want to be within that 15 to 20, and that's kind of where we are projecting to be for next year. The 2 years out, you know, a lot of things could change. A lot of things will change 2 years from now. We're going to have Central to talk about, and we already have figured about $250,000 is a minimum amount we're going to save out of our general fund for the maintenance costs that we budget for in that building. You know, we haven't, you know, there'll obviously be some staffing considerations that'll be made next year too. So that was a lot on that UAB, and I know it can be kind of overwhelming, so I don't know if you have any questions on that. Again, as I said, our best projections are 1 year out, and I think we can do a really good job of that right now because we know a lot. Enrollment and supplemental state aid and so forth. So go ahead.
No, go
Okay,
ahead.
the final document then is our capital projects for this coming summer and the following beginning of the summer. Remember, we talked about how sometimes projects happen in the summertime between fiscal years. So there is one MHS remodel project that probably won't happen until, well, it won't happen until after next school year, but we wanted to get it on here now because that's something that's going to happen next fiscal year, but it'll run into 2020, you know, end of 2020 into the next fiscal year. And so we're still within that 1.5 million because we're going to take out that 600,000 probably won't really be an expense until 2021. But so we're still within that 1.5 million that we budget for summer capital projects. So these are we might be coming back to you for approval of some RFPs that have to go out for these projects, but we wanted to get the listing as part of our certifying the budget. So that's all I have. I don't know if you have any questions. The recommendation then is to approve the 1920 budget at the 13.82521 and a $91 million, which is, where does that number come from? It comes from our total resources available in all funds. So don't think that's just general fund, but that's total cash resources. And that's right on for the document that is published in the paper, the 91,028,102.
So I will move the approval of certifying the budget for the fiscal year 2019-2020 with a levy of $13.8251 levy rate and a budget of $91,028,000. I have to stop.
102.
$28,102. In old age, commas sometimes don't appear, and you have to start counting place values.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the budget as presented. Again, the levy rate is, I'm going to round, I hope that's okay. The levy rate is about $13.83 roughly, and a budget of $91,028,102. So to be exact on that. Again, Tom, the information is great, so thank you for that. It is not the first time as a board that we have seen this information either. So a $91 million approval is not it's not a quick approval for us, but we've talked about it multiple times and seen these lists. And Tom, you probably know all this in your sleep, forwards and backwards, I'm going to guess.
Sure thing.
So, is there any other discussion on the budget? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Tom, thank you. Next item on our agenda is to approve setting school fees and lunch prices for the 2019-20 school year.
Okay, so in the board book, there were the proposed changes. There's one change since the board book went out Friday, it got changed this morning, and that is to the activity passes. We're proposing an increase of $5 at the elementary and middle school for a total of $40, and then the high school, an increase of $10 for a total of $50. And we, Mike Morgan did do a survey of some MAC schools and like-sized schools, and that puts us right in line from what they do. So, you know, it's not like uncommon, and I did look back into some history, and it has been since 2012, I believe, that we increased activity ticket prices. So
Will you repeat those dollar amounts?
yeah, it's $40 for elementary, basically K-6, and middle school 7-8, $40, and then $50 for 9-12.
And I'm sorry, and that is an increase of how much?
Of $10 at the high school. So then there are also proposed, I guess, a change, but eliminating a couple fees at the high school. We will just work those costs into our budget. So for the cleaning fees, that is something the district needs to be responsible for, cleaning those uniforms. That was a waivable fee, not everybody paid for it, so I think we can just find the resource to pay for that. As well as the vehicle registration at the high school, so there won't be a vehicle registration fee next year.
What's the rationale for eliminating the vehicle registration fee?
It's really not recognized as best practice anymore in the state. Because your collection there should go directly back to the activity, which would be fixing or repairing of the parking lot.
Which is what we budget
Which is what we
for
budget
anyway,
for, so, in visiting with other folks, it would be best practice for us to discontinue. I would say most schools at this point have eliminated that.
What kind of fees are we forfeiting? That's what I was gonna ask.
That's $15,000 a year, roughly.
And what is it on the,
The uniform
Uniform
cleaning was
cleaning.
around $6,000.
So 20 Gs.
So I guess that's a positive, and not having to charge families, I guess, for those fees.
Charge parking fees, $200.
all right, what are the wishes of the board?
And I did not go over the nutrition prices either. There is a proposed increase of
sorry.
10 cents for breakfast and lunch, sorry. Didn't know if there was any questions about that.
Tom, have we reached the federal minimums yet on those?
Good question, that's why I have Alicia sitting here in the background. The question was, did we reach the federal minimums? I know we've talked about it, but you can speak of it.
We were at the paid lunch equity, but with
Alicia, would you step to the microphone? Sorry,
I told her she didn't have to, but see.
our audience at home can't hear you otherwise, well, we can hear you okay, but.
So we had reached the USDA paid lunch equity mark. And with using last year's, because they don't release the documents for us to make those calculations until sometime in the summer. So using last year's, we are the paid lunch equity, which is the difference between what paid meals are and what is reimbursed between the federal, USDA, state, and the commodity entitlement that we get per meal. So that totals up to, for lunch, $3.77. The paid equity difference is $3.04 per meal. So we're at $275 at elementary, we're at $285 at middle, and $310 at the high school. For adults and second meal prices, it has to be at minimum the $377, well, we're at $450. So that's something in addition to sodium and calories and whole grains and meat portions and all of that. So that's something else that they regulate. Besides meal sales, they regulate a la carte sales, and then they regulate meal prices.
And the changing of the 10-ounce hamburger bun or whatever it was.
6 now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
6
like-
ounce, whatever it was.
Yeah, elementary level gets 1.5 ounce bun, and middle school gets, or high school gets 2 ounces.
That half ounce makes a big difference.
I know.
It's like 2 or 3 sesame seeds, I think.
Oh, I'll move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
I second that.
Thanks.
Been moved to approve both school fees and lunch prices as presented. And I'm going to say one more time, these, on the meal prices, this is an increase of 10 cents.
Correct.
So it's a very minimal increase in the grand scheme of things. And so lunch at the high school for $2.10 seems like a bargain. So, any other discussion on the approval of those fees? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you. Thanks, Alicia.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Alicia. The next item on our agenda is to approve the collective bargaining agreements between the Muscatine Community School District and the local 1560 Council of AFSCME for the secretarial, clerical aid, and the para units. We have the bus driver unit and the custodial maintenance units. Jerry, do you have anything you want to add?
We have met with those 3 bargaining units. We have reached a tentative agreement. Those 3 units have their union folks have ratified those, and it then comes to the board for approval. And I would just say that it was a pleasure working with them this year. I think we came to good, fair settlements, and it does represent 2-year contract negotiations. So I think it worked out really well for everyone.
What are the wishes of the board?
I move to approve the collective bargaining agreements between Muscatine Community School District and Local 1560 and Council of AFSCME.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the collective bargaining agreements as presented. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item on our agenda is to set the non-union salary increases. And Jerry, I believe you're going to recommend that we table this until we have some additional information.
Yeah, we are still working on some of the details of that, and we were hoping to be farther along than we are, and so we will bring that to the board in May.
Okay. And I believe we don't need to do anything with that other than we just are not taking action on it. Okay. That takes us to our discussion and information portion of our agenda, and that takes us to a construction update.
Well, we have, work is underway at McKinley. The playground is, I think for the most part has been moved or almost moved. They're getting ready for work there. We also have out for bid for the science STEM wing. We did hear today from the city of Muscatine regarding our request for a building permit that the city is going to require some additional construction costs in this that would include some sort of storm shelter construction added to the project. This is something that is, I don't want to say it's unique to Muscatine, but it's something that the state fire marshal does not require. That it is Many cities do waive this for construction. Our city has opted to modify the request. We have just, I said we just got this information today. Our architect is looking at it, but I think we should be prepared. This could be anywhere from adding $500,000 to $1 million to the science project, depending on where that may land. So we're certainly going to look as many as options as possible, and so that we can move forward. It is disappointing to a degree that this will cause something of a wrinkle in this. We will work with the city as close as we can to come to some reasonable resolution on this. Obviously, our high school has about 1,600 kids, and so we'd be looking at some sort of a storm shelter for about 360. So with a fairly strenuous construction that would withstanding winds of 250 miles an hour and all kinds of debris resistance. So like I said, our architect will be working on that, try and find the most efficient way to meet this requirement so that we can move forward.
It's an expensive little surprise.
Yeah, it is. Having remodeled a kitchen and a bathroom a few times, I know you always can get surprises. This one, though, is a substantial amount when you consider the scope of the project. It's about an $8 million project, and if we're adding $1 million, would be substantial.
Harry, how long has this been on the books, this statute?
I believe this is the 2015 International Building Code, and it was put in place following some of the hurricane damage that was done in parts of the country. My understanding is that the International Building Code folks are revising that, because this pretty much puts a stop to any school building on.
Right.
And that's why the state fire marshal does not require, they do not require, in their jurisdiction, they don't require schools to do that.
Did this apply at all in the Jefferson construction?
It did not.
Okay, so the Jefferson construction was fine without it.
The Jefferson construction was fine. The PE center, we were fine, and they did approve the McKinley project without that. So.
And if I understand correctly, this building code would require the storm shelter to be certified to wind speeds of up to 250 miles per hour?
Yes.
And
Yes.
254 miles per hour is the maximum wind speed ever recorded on Earth?
Yes, it also requires that it will
good
be able to
idea.
withstand a missile shot of a 13-pound object shot at 100 miles per hour.
See, has the city offered to pitch in for the $1 million this is going to cost us?
No.
Okay.
No. And I know I'm sounding probably a little bit negative. I understand the city has, they're doing what they think they need to do, but it does put an additional burden on us. And again, if the high school were on the other side of the bypass, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because the state fire marshal, I believe, would have that jurisdiction.
You may want to be diplomatic, but I don't. I also sit on the county board, and we've had similar trouble with some of the city being, shall we say, overly aggressive with applying certain codes that in our view has been unnecessary. In fact, we terminated a contract we had with the city because we felt they were hassling businesses within the county because we had contracted our work. And I'm very disappointed. I'm beyond disappointed. I think it's reprehensible that the city would be this arbitrary in its application of a code. They've agreed to partially, I understand, waive the requirement. That seems ludicrous. I mean, either you put enough lifeboats on the Titanic or you don't. And I'm going to urge the folks who sit here on Thursday nights to nip this idiocy in the bud.
They are waiving the sanitation requirements of flushable toilets in the storm area.
So we got to bring our own coffee cans, but it's got to be able to withstand the most powerful hurricane on Earth. Great.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I will keep the board up to date.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. I have just a couple other announcements before we adjourn for the evening, just upcoming meetings and events. We have April 19th will be a no school day. That is a non-contracted day. April 22nd is a no school day. That's a teacher in-service day. April 28th will be our Excellence in Education Scholarship Ceremony. That'll be at 1 p.m. and it'll be at MHS in the Commons. And then it's hard to believe, but then that takes us into May. May 13th will be our next regular school board meeting. We'll be here at City Hall at 7 p.m. As I look into April, I certainly hope that means that we have only good weather ahead of us, and that
Keep
we are
your fingers crossed.
we are done with the winter that we had. Are there any other announcements or anything anybody wants to add for the good of the cause? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. And is there a second? Second. It has been moved and seconded to adjourn for the evening. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you very much.